There's two types of cartridges, center fire and rim fire. The .22 cartridge that most people are familiar with is a rim fire, which means the firing pin hits the soft bottom rim of the case, setting off the priming compound inside, which ignites the powder. A center fire cartridge, like this one, has a primer in the center of the base. When the primer is hit with a firing pin, it flashes inside, igniting the powder. The powder burns instantaneously, creating expanding gas, forcing the bullet down the barrel and out at very high speed.
Some people think a bullet explodes out and a gun could blow up.
With proper knowledge and maintenance and correct ammunition, that's not going to happen.
You mentioned caliber before. What exactly is caliber?
Let me explain. This is a .45 automatic cartridge, used in the auto we just looked at. The .45 refers to the bullet. Take a look at the chart.
Let me guess. The bullet is 4/10 of an inch across? Oh, actually, 45/100 of an inch across?
That's exactly right. Just the bullet.
Then a .22 would be 22/100 of an inch in diameter?
You got it. With a .22 and a .45, that's essentially correct. There's exceptions, but all you have to remember is to use ammunition compatible with your gun. If you're not sure, just look on the bottom of the case. You'll find the caliber stamped there.
.357 Magnum? What's that?
The names given to ammunition come from the type of case that is used. For example, the .38 Special cartridge and the .357 Magnum use the same .38 caliber bullet, which actually measures 357 thousandths of an inch. The Magnum refers to a more powerful round, with extra powder making the difference. The .357 Magnum is just a .38 Special case made slightly longer and thicker to prevent someone from accidentally loading it into a revolver made only for .38 Special. See that? It won't fit.
Mm-hmm.
A .357 revolver is more strongly constructed to handle the more powerful Magnum round. So you can use a lighter .38 Special cartridge in a .357 revolver, but not vice versa.
Why would I use .38s in a .357?
Since they're less powerful, they're more pleasant and comfortable to shoot, and they're also less expensive.
Oh, that's good to know.
Well, there are also calibers that are designated in millimeters. A popular one is the 9mm auto. It originated in Europe, where they use the metric system.
What's the purpose of so many different types of guns and ammunition, Mickey?
Well, you'll see as we go along. There's lots of things. Hunting, competition shooting, home defense, personal preference, or just what's comfortable to shoot.
New shooters can easily encounter confusion about different types of ammunition. Now that Lee understands some basic differences, it'll be much less likely that she'll make a mistake and use the wrong ammunition. The subject of ammunition can be quite extensive and require some study. If you're not sure what to use in your gun, look for the caliber notation stamped on the barrel of the gun and use only the ammunition that matches it. If you still have a question, ask your local gunsmith or dealer. Now, let's get back to Mickey and Lee as Lee gets a few more tips, this time from Mickey's partner, Mike Dalton.
Lee, this is my partner, Mike Dalton.
Nice to meet you, Mike.
It's my pleasure, Lee. So how'd you do in the classroom?
I think I got it all, but I guess I'll find out when I do some shooting.
She needs to pick out a revolver to use on the range. But first, I think you could explain some differences in ammunition to her.
I thought you just did that.
Well, there's a little more to it.
Well, you're in expert hands, Lee. I'll go put away everything in the classroom while Mike answers all your questions.
Lee, did you know that different types of bullets can be used in the same gun?
Oh, brother.
Well, don't worry. We'll take it one step at a time.
That would be helpful.
Okay, here goes. Here's some examples of different types of bullets. This is a full metal jacket design. The lead bullet is encased in a copper jacket. It's made to pass through its target with very little loss of energy.
Well, what kind of a bullet would I use for home defense?
A soft-nosed bullet like this, one that has the lead partially exposed, or a hollow point would be a good choice. Both are designed to transfer their energy to the target upon impact.
What does that mean exactly?
Basically, more stopping power.
I see. How about those other bullets?
The one on the left is called a wad cutter. It's used for shooting at paper targets. It uses less powder for reduced recoil and is very accurate. The other is a semi-wide cutter, which is a heavier, multi-purpose target bullet.
Boy, there's a lot to remember about ammunition.
Well, there's a simple way to handle it. When you go to buy ammunition, just look at the end flap on the box.
.38 Special Semi-Wad Cutter, 158 grains. 158 grains of what?
Lead. That's the weight of the bullet. Bullets come in various weights, but generally speaking, the lighter the bullets, the less the recoil.
Oh. Can I use these in a .38 revolver? Oh. Can I use these in a .38 revolver?
Exactly. And that's basically all you need to know about ammunition. But if you ever become confused, just ask the dealer that you're buying it from.
For your safety information, we'll begin by reviewing the first three, the first of which is the golden rule of gun safety. Rule number 1, always point the muzzle in a safe direction. Number 2, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. There's a natural tendency to place your finger on the trigger when holding a gun, but trigger guards are made to enable you to hold the gun comfortably with your finger off the trigger. Number 3, keep the action open and the gun unloaded until ready to shoot. Now here are the remaining 7 safety rules that apply to shooting. Number 4, know how the gun operates. That reiterates the need for expert training. You can inquire at your local sporting goods shop or contact the National Rifle Association for the nearest certified volunteer instructor. Number 5, be sure your gun and ammunition are compatible. If you're not sure, ask an expert. Don't guess. Number 6, carry only 1 caliber of ammunition when shooting. Smaller ammunition can be accidentally placed in a gun chamber designed for larger ammunition, creating an obstruction and a very hazardous situation. Number 7, be sure of your target and what's beyond. This means observing your prospective area of fire before you shoot. It's simple. Think first, shoot second. Number 8, wear eye and ear protection as appropriate. Guns are loud. They can also emit debris and hot gases that could cause eye injury. For these reasons, safety glasses and ear protection are recommended apparel. Number 9, don't mix alcohol or drugs with shooting. It goes without saying. Normal mental and physical reactions are impaired, so just don't do it. Number 10, be aware that circumstances may require additional rules unique to a particular situation. For example, every gun range has its own set of rules. Know what they are before you begin. If you own a gun, you're required to think. Remember that. And remember that you are the one responsible for gun safety.
A very important aspect of safety is eye and ear protection. You must wear good shooting glasses to protect your eyes, and ear protection to protect your hearing. Shooting glasses can save your eyesight, though highly unlikely there's potential danger of a case blowing out, or in an extreme case, the gun blowing up. Let's review the basic rules of safety. It's always loaded. You can't tell at a glance if a gun is loaded. You must check every time. With the automatic, you drop the magazine, pull back slightly on the slide, and check to make sure that there is not a chambered round. It pays to check carefully. Never turn uprange without holstering the gun or placing it on the bench facing downrange. Cylinder open for revolvers or magazine out, chamber emptied for automatics. At most ranges, the guns must be holstered unless shooters are on the firing line under the direction of the range master.
Now let's talk about why you came here today. Pistols.
The word pistol always reminds me of the old westerns.
Know what you mean. Or they're sometimes referred to as handguns because they're supported only with the hands. Or sidearms because they can be carried in a holster on the side of your body.
That one is a lot different than ours at home.
Right. There's two types of pistols. From what you told me, your gun is what's called a semi-automatic. But first we're going to take up the revolver, which is what I'm holding. For anyone just starting out shooting, we suggest a revolver.
Why?
They're simpler to operate and more easily understood.
Oh, I see. You know, I've always wondered about something. Why is it called a revolver?
Because the cylinder, where the cartridges go, revolves. The part surrounding the trigger is called the trigger guard. The main body of a pistol is called the frame, and where your hand holds the gun is the grip. This is the front sight, and this is the rear sight. Again, this is the cylinder and the cylinder release. When you pull the trigger, the cylinder turns to line up a fresh cartridge with the barrel. At the same time, the hammer cocks back. At the end of the trigger pull, the hammer falls, allowing the firing pin to hit the back of the cartridge, setting it off and firing the bullet. Like I said before, the place where the bullet exits the barrel is called the muzzle.
That's basically pretty simple.
You're right. Now that you know the basic parts of the revolver, we'll go over the two other most important safety rules. Remember, the first rule was always be muzzle conscious.
Always point the muzzle in a safe direction.
Right. Rule number 2, never put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot.
Oh, that's logical.
Right.
Oh, that's logical.
Right. Now we call this section of the gun the action, which brings up safety rule number 3. Always keep the action open and the gun unloaded until you're ready to use it. You try it. Close the cylinder. Now push the cylinder release and open the action. Very good. Now hand it back to me.
That's easy. I have a question. Could a loaded gun go off if you drop it?
That depends on the gun. Let me show you. In this particular model, there's a block that rests between the hammer and the frame when the gun is at rest. It's designed to prevent an accidental discharge of the gun if it's dropped or if the hammer is hit. This may vary on other makes of guns. You should always refer to the owner's manual if you're uncertain.
It doesn't seem so threatening when you break it down like that. I've heard that a gun can just go off laying around the house.
Well, that's like a car just starting up sitting out in the driveway.
The things you hear and read.
Right. Now there's two different types of hammer and trigger arrangements, single action or double action. This is a double action revolver, which means the trigger has two functions. It cocks the hammer and releases it. With a single action revolver, the trigger has only one function. It releases the hammer, so you have to first cock it with your thumb. On the double action revolver, you can operate at single action if you want.
Tell me about that one, the semi-automatic.
That's just what we're about to cover.
Oh, good. What's the difference between them other than the way they look?
Good question. Remember where the cartridges go in a revolver?
Oh, on this one the bullet holder comes out.
It's called a magazine. We put the cartridges in the magazine and insert it into the magazine well. First of all, The semi-automatic has ammunition inside the grip, in the magazine. It has a single chamber, which is the rear part of the barrel. The barrel is enclosed by the slide, which moves back and forth each time the gun is being fired, cocking the hammer and reloading the gun each time. This is why it's an automatic. In other words, it does this automatically.
Why is it called a semi-automatic?
Well, a fully automatic gun would keep firing as long as you hold the trigger back.
Oh, like a machine gun.
Exactly. A semi-automatic means you have to pull the trigger for each shot, one at a time. It's referred to as an automatic, or auto for short, since it's self-loading.
Oh, it loads itself after each shot is fired.
You're picking this up quickly, Lee. Now, you should understand the controls and safety features on autos will also vary from make to make. This auto is a Smith & Wesson Model 645. It has 3 additional features the revolver doesn't have. A thumb safety to prevent you from putting it into operation until you're ready, even if you pull the trigger accidentally. The other is the slide stop, which keeps the slide back and open. After the last round is fired, the slide stop keeps the slide from closing, letting you see the gun is empty. The third feature is simply the magazine release.
Kind of like the cylinder release on the revolver?
That's right. To load the auto, you insert the magazine, pull the slide all the way back, and let it go. See that it's also cocked and ready to fire. On this model, you must immediately put on the thumb safety, unless you intend to fire the gun right away. When you put on the thumb safety, it will disengage the firing pin inside, allowing the hammer to fall without firing the gun. This is a double-action automatic, so to fire the gun, you simply take the safety off and pull the trigger. Which both cocks the hammer and fires the gun. On a single action, such as this Colt, you can only cock it by pulling back the hammer.
What makes the slide go back and forth when you fire?
Let me show you with this double-action Smith & Wesson auto. When you let the slide forward, it takes a cartridge from the top of the magazine and inserts it into the chamber. When you pull the trigger, the hammer falls forward, hitting the firing pin, which fires the cartridge. The backward force of the cartridge pushes the slide back, which ejects the empty shell, recocks the hammer, then the spring inside the slide moves it forward, chambering the next cartridge. This is known as a complete cycle. This entire action takes but a fraction of a second.
You know, the gun we have at home is an auto. What makes it different from these?
Your pistol is a .22 caliber, and this one is a .45 caliber. One major difference has to do with the size of the cartridge, so there's an obvious difference in the size of the guns. Take a look at this .22 auto compared to the .45.
Oh, I see.
When you've got the proper sight alignment, you'll see the front sight razor sharp. We're going to start with a blank target, so you learn to focus your attention on the sights, not the target.
Right.
The rear sight looks slightly blurred, and the target looks a bit blurred too. There should be an equal amount of light showing on either side as you look through the rear sight to the front sight.
Got it.
And the top of the front sight should be flush with an imaginary line across the top of the rear sight. Then, you center that line on where you want the bullet to hit.
Most expert instructors agree that good shooting begins behind the sight picture. You must learn to focus on the front sight. The target looks blurred. The rear sight looks blurred. Front sight is in focus with the target resting atop it like a bubble. Sight picture and trigger control are the foundations of good shooting. The problem with many shooters is that they want to watch the target, especially if it's moving. The eye just does that normally. Your brain tells your eyes to follow that moving target, but when you do, you miss. You've got to watch your front sight. The target should be a blur. The front post must be centered in the rear notch with equal amounts of light on either side. Experts have varying opinions as to the width of the rear blade or whether or not it should be solid black or have a white line or dot. Other top shooters recommend undercut front sights, black sights, colored sights. The opinions vary widely on the width of notch and the front sight. Talk to the experienced people at your range or your neighborhood gun shop. Get an idea of what's comfortable for you. It boils down to personal preference. Once you've been shooting a while, you'll be able to make your own decisions, like tennis, golf, archery. Shooting is a sport of concentration. Whenever I come away from a range, I'm always very relaxed. The reason is, I put all the other problems out of my mind when I'm concentrating on that front sight. It's almost like a form of meditation. Everything else is out of my mind except the front sight. Some shooters say it's the most important lesson they learned about shooting. The second basic skill is trigger control. It's true. Squeeze the trigger is probably the piece of advice most frequently heard about gun handling. It's true. It may change in a semi or professional match, but for target practice at the gun range, a smooth squeeze will most often be followed by an accurate shot. There's also the problem gun instructors call the crunch. You start pulling the trigger with your finger, but before the hammer cycles, you clutch the gun with your whole hand as if you were going to crush it. Some experts theorize that this is a person's fear of the blast recoil, but the gun jerks down. The bullet will hit somewhere out in front downrange, but might altogether miss the target. Imagine that trigger finger disconnected from the rest of your hand. It should move freely while your other fingers maintain a constant tension on the gun. The only finger that should move is the trigger finger. Some instructors pull the trigger with the outside of the first joint, while other shooters use the tip of their finger. Try both methods and see what feels natural for you. Use the same method on both automatics and revolvers. Making doubly sure the gun is unloaded, practice your trigger pull by dry firing. Do it often. Sight the gun at a target and squeeze the trigger. You'll strengthen the muscles in your trigger finger. Become more familiar with the feel of the gun and sharpen your shooting skill. On the gun range, practice both live and dry firing. Be surprised every time that gun goes off. Because if you anticipate the blast recoil, you'll flinch and be way off the target. Try loading 3 cylinders of a revolver with live rounds, the remaining 3 with fired rounds. On the firing line, spin the cylinder. You won't know if it's a live round coming up. It's easy to tell when you flinch. And great to know when you don't. The same is true for automatics. The secret to a good, smooth, safe draw is to have no wasted movement. Minimize your body motions. You can use this grip for either revolvers or automatics. The strong hand thumb knocks off the safety. The weak hand grabs the strong hand around the gun, and the weak hand thumb pushes down on top of the strong hand thumb. The weak hand index finger pushes up on the bottom of the trigger guard, resulting in a very stable and balanced, strong grip. close group in the black. The grip I've shown you does an excellent job of controlling recoil. Also, both your thumbs are safely tucked away. The grip works well with revolvers and automatics. Remember that any grip that exposes one of the thumbs is potential for trouble. Both thumbs should be tucked away like this. Your grip should be as tight on the gun as possible, but short of your hands shaking or trembling. There's a lot of exercises you can do to strengthen your grip. Many competitive match shooters lift weights and use various types of grip exercises. One of the least expensive tools is an ordinary rubber ball. Doing several sets like this each day will greatly develop your hand muscles and help build shooting strength.